Hello everyone and welcome back to the Prepared Mind channel. It is the weekly wrap up. And what we talk about every week in the weekly wrap up, the first question we have to ask is, are we getting closer to shitting fan? Or are we getting farther from SHTF, right? Well, and every week so far since I've started this weekly episode is to answer in the affirmative. Yes, we're getting closer to shit hitting the fan. Right, so I want to start off with some big enchiladas. Number one, on Friday, Iran, and the story has been confirmed by CNN and several British online newspapers, and it's being reported widely that Iran captured a British oil tanker. Now, what is fascinating about this is the British did it to the Iranians just last week. Or was it this week? There is just so much going on, it is impossible to keep up. Impossible? Well, I'll do my best, right? So the British captured an Iranian tanker, and the Iranians said, look, right, there's consequences for these actions. And I'm paraphrasing. And lo and behold, this week, the Iranians captured a British tanker. You know, what the final disposition of that is going to be, no one can say. Because, what was it, earlier in the week, the British accused the Iranians of trying to capture a tanker. And the Iranians said, no, I don't think so. Right? And it turned out that the British and the Americans are playing more games. And the whole thing, to me, this week has exhausted me, folks. It's exhausted me. It's kicked my ass. I'm tired, I'm excited about all of the crazy things, but I'm tired also. They've worn me out, damn it. One more reason we need good food and good nutrition when shit hits the fan, because the stress level of life and shit hits the fan, it's going to be pretty high. You're going to need your energy. You're going to need to be able to rest well. So, where are we going with Iran and England? Well, the United States and England have been allies since we stopped fighting in the War of 1812. Since then, we've been allies, right? When someone attacks England, they're now our enemy. If someone attacks us, the British stand behind us and go, USA, right? As a result of Iran, taking the British tanker, the United States can become involved. Now, we know that Donald Trump has threatened an awful lot. He's rattled his saber. He's even taken it out of the sheath a bit, right? But he hasn't gone after and done all of the damage that you might suspect a president could do, given the circumstances. He came within supposedly 1 hour or 10 minutes or 1 minute from bombing Iran a couple weeks ago, and he didn't. He said, nope, not doing it. Not worth it. Right? The consequences are going to be disastrous. And that is what Iran has promised, is disastrous consequences for attacking them. Now, the United States, of course, flew a drone over their sovereign territory several years ago. I think it was 2011. And they hacked into that drone and landed it. Multi-million dollar high-tech super-duper drone. And then just a few weeks ago, a Predator drone, right? One, I think it's a $250 million, $250 million for a drone. Or was it one of their cheap ones? It was only $220 million, right? That got shot down for flying over Iranian territory. That one they shot down versus hacking in and landing it. So the Iranians have shown a willingness to protect and defend their country the same way anyone would want to protect and defend themselves against someone else that's been threatening them. Now, as far as the Iranians are concerned, they're very upset with the United States of America because the United States has been using sanctions, which are threats of tariffs, threats of increased expense, threats of cutting off aid supplies, threats of cutting off technology, sanctions, economic and otherwise, of any nation that does business with a nation the United States is sanctioned, right? You trade with an enemy we don't like, we're going to sanction you. So other nations have backed away. Because of that, Iran has been crippled economically. And they're not allowed to make international transactions using the SWIFT system, which is essentially a sovereign countries, independent nations, use this network to settle debts. They'll make deals and they'll settle debts using money transfers. In the United States, got it under the microscope and they're looking and making sure everything's good. And if anyone breaks the rules, they get sanctioned or they get cut out of the system. So Iran has been hurt for decades by U.S. sanctions, and they've had it. They're tired of it, so you can understand their frustration. And I can understand the frustration on the United States side. We just want Iran to play nice, and Iran continues to threaten to wipe off from the face of the earth the nation of Israel, right? Because of long-standing feud and questions about political lines and boundaries, etc., and yada yada and blah blah, right? But where we're at today, Iran has said no more invading our space, right? Our sovereign space is sovereign. As a result, they've brought down 2 drones, one way or another, and for some reason they think that they have the right to capture a British ship the same way the British decided they have a right to capture in international waters an Iranian ship, right? I see a formula, a recipe for disaster, for war. And it's very scary, right? Because the control, it's out of our control. It's in the hands of a bunch of people in Washington who are of dubious and questionable nature, right? What is their integrity level? Well, before I get to their integrity level, let me finish with Iran, right? Iran this week is doing this because they have 2 allies that are massive, and they're both nuclear, right? And then they have other working partners that want to help them or assist them or cooperate with them. So you've got China and Russia as military backers. We can't just go in and tackle and beat up Iran because Russia and China, it would escalate. Additionally, I believe India, and I know Japan is doing some business with Iran. Right? Now, the way these countries are doing more business more easily with Iran is there is now a system called Instex. And this week, Russia has joined it. Last week, it was announced that it was operational and that Germany was joining it, and France, and I believe England, and Iran. And they're going to have a workaround, an ability to go around U.S. sanctions and use a payment system for settling debts other than the SWIFT system. Okay? So there is a de-dollarization, but I'll get back to de-dollarization. I just wanted to talk about Iran and what's going on with that. We could have war started today, right now. As you're listening to this, there could be bombs flying. How would we know? Until the government wants to let us know through its CIA sleuths, right? Its mouthpiece for the CIA, known as the American mainstream media. Okay? And what I love about free speech is I can say this stuff, and I haven't hurt anybody. And I have a right to criticize. In fact, it's encouraged. So, Iran, that's what's going on with them. Right? Now, I did mention that political leaders in Washington and around the world have dubious character. Right? Questionable morals. Decidedly unethical ethics. Right? So, this week, Jeffrey Epstein, well, it's been demonstrated he's not a billionaire. He's only a multi hundreds of millions of dollars millionaire. But the guy does own at least Little St. James and maybe Large St. James down in the American Virgin Islands, which is an interesting name for a set of islands where Epstein wants an island. Plus he has his palatial mansion, his mansion, his residence in New York. I believe he has residence in Florida as well. He's asked to be allowed out on bail, but he's considered a flight risk. The information that's coming out about Jeffrey Epstein is damning. Information that was supposedly sealed in a court case. Right? In all of his courts and trials, they've established that he's a sex offender and a pedophile, and he's got to register. But certainly he wasn't held accountable for all that he did with the people that were part of those cases. Now what's happened is more cases are being filed, and once they arrested Mr. Epstein, more women have come forward and said, yeah, they were trafficked. Stories about these girls who wanted to escape the island, also known, Little St. James, also known as, the name I've always heard it called is Orgy Island. But this week they started calling it Pedophile or Pedo Island. I guess it's called that too. I don't know. I've only heard the other one, Orgy Island. And of course, his airplane he sold, his jet for transporting people down there was the Lolita Express, and he sold that. Anyways, dubious nature. It's not just Jeffrey Epstein. This week, the mainstream media, I believe it was NBC, aired some footage back from the 90s, long before Epstein was publicly known to be a pedophile, long before he was tried. He was at Trump's Mar-a-Lago estate property, whatever you want to call it. And he was at a party at Trump's. And it was quite interesting that the news tried portraying the fact that Epstein was at Trump's house is somehow tying Trump, right, to child trafficking. And no, it was a piss poor attempt to try and tie President Trump to this guy. But we do know there's lots of people. Oh, the girl, one of the girls said she tried getting off of Little St. James Island, tried swimming away, and they wouldn't let her escape. Essentially, when someone wants to leave and you keep them there, you're a prisoner, you're kidnapped, right? And if you're being forced to perform sexual acts, that's like human sex slavery, is it not? Right? So they're doing all they can to try and hide and suppress Epstein. At the same time, they want to try and expose President Trump, but they've got nothing there. But what we do have is an extensive list of names, times, people, places, and other women that's going to come out, apparently. And there is an incredible amount of tension and pressure behind the scenes to try and suppress this information. And there's also an incredible amount of pressure and tension being put on them to release this information to the public. Secrets no more. Even if their allegations say these are the allegations, but these are the parties who are named. As far as the sealed records that have been legally unsealed, that's a matter of public record. That is not an allegation, it's a matter of public record, and it should be released as far as I'm concerned. Now, what was released this week was quite interesting. Former Prime Minister of the State of Israel, Ehud Barak, someone snapped a picture of him entering Jeffrey Epstein's residence in New York. And while he had the collar turned up on his coat and he was wearing, I believe, sunglasses, still easily identifiable. What's worse is that 4 young women, called hotties, were also seen and filmed entering the residence. Now, what people do, hey, if everyone's legal and everyone's having a good time, fine. But if those girls were underage, that's something, right? That's something. Now, I looked at the pictures of the young women. One of them looked like she was probably over 18. The others were kind of questionable. And again, we're talking about the questionable ethics, morality, and trustworthiness of world leaders, political leaders, industrial or corporate leaders, right? Maybe military leaders. Who knows who's tied in with this Epstein? But it is about to cause an absolute storm within the world of politics and social media and everywhere, possibly banking. For that reason, a lot of people are suspicious that we're going to have a false flag event, maybe something with Iran, to distract us from what is happening with regard to Epstein, with regard to what's going on Wall Street. What's going on with the banking system. This week, Deutsche Bank, it was reported that their customers are removing about $1 billion in assets per day. Now, how big a deal is that? Well, I don't know. I don't know how much of their assets is gold on reserve. I don't know what their assets are, which are debt, right? Their debt obligations that people owe them, people that have borrowed, right? That debt, that's an asset, but you can't withdraw gold, and you can't withdraw a mortgage or other loans. So what real assets do they have? Cash on deposit at the bank. Anyways, if Deutsche Bank goes down, it's going to bring down the French banks, the Italian banks, and who knows what other banks. Serious big problems going on with Deutsche Bank. Serious big problems. And since all nations are now interconnected, right, the United States would suffer. And they tried tying Deutsche Bank to, I believe, Goldman Sachs. Then they tried tying it to Commerzbank, which is another German bank. And they failed to do so. Right? They're having a hard time salvaging Deutsche Bank. Now, what we have heard this week also is that the Central Bank of Germany, maybe the ECB, is they won't allow Deutsche Bank to fail. They will back whatever they need to, right, to cover their debt obligations. Because banks like you and I, if you've got a house payment or a rent, if you've got a car payment or a credit card payment, you have to make those payments. You have obligations to fill. And Deutsche Bank does as well. And if they don't have that gold or cash on reserve, how will they make their debt obligations? Because they borrow money. Everyone borrows money from everybody. But if someone pulled the plug or the drain plug on the bank, like this $1 billion a day, going on for how long? Maybe it's $2 billion or $5 billion. How would we know? Right? We can just report and discuss and comment on what we've been told. How is Deutsche Bank going to pay its bills? They let go of 20,000 employees, or was it 18,000, just last week. But if you recall, in the last few years, there have been other times where Deutsche Bank is reported letting go of 10 or 11 or 12,000 employees. They've been letting go of, and I can't imagine an institution, a business, letting go of that many employees. Let's just say 30,000 in the last couple of years. That's 30,000 bodies. That's 60,000 hands. What were those hands and bodies busy doing for the bank to make the bank money? And what isn't being done at the bank? What work isn't being done at the bank now to fulfill its obligations and the workload required to manage a bank of that size? That's the question we get to ask. What the heck is going on? Right? What else happened this week? It has been a huge week. I did a 2-hour live broadcast. I did another 45-minute, I believe, 40 or 45-minute broadcast just trying to catch up on some more news. It has been a week of massive news stories. Massive news stories. And, are we getting closer to shit hitting the fan? The answer is yes. Yes. I mean, we had that clown up in Tacoma, Washington, take his AR-15 and Molotov cocktails and set them on fire and throw them at cars in the building. The police shot this clown. And this week, Antifa comes out and he is a martyr. Now, when you martyr somebody, what you're doing is holding them up as a stellar example. The martyr is the hero that was killed doing the holy work. And since Antifa are communists, literally communist folks, since Antifa are communists, and they don't believe in God, they believe the state is God, and that the leaders of the state are like gods. The same way in Soviet Russia, right? Lenin, he was embalmed and encased in glass, and they pulled all the oxygen out and pumped it full of nitrogen to preserve him. He is their deity. They're saying this knucklehead in Washington, because that's what I think of him, and that's how his behavior indicated he is. He is now a martyr for them. He is a hero. He is to be looked at and revered. His actions, right? A martyr's doing the good work, which everyone else in Antifa should be doing as well. So they want to hold him up as an example of how the rest of them should behave. He is a martyr. Martyrs are also involved, not in charity work. Martyrs aren't gardeners. Martyrs are holy warriors. So if he is a martyr to them, we're talking that Antifa is saying that this is a holy war. It's a holy war. Now there's something else that happened this week, right? You have the radical left Antifa, and you have the radical left politicians in Washington. And there's what are being nicknamed the four horsemen of the apocalypse. Maybe it should be the four horse-faced women, the four horsewomen. I don't know what to call them, right? But there's four Congress women that are Democrats at the national level, not in some state house, but at the national level. And they are extremely anti-Constitution. They're extremely anti-America. They're anti-United States of America. They're anti-United States in the way that we think of those concepts. They don't like the concept that we're operating under, and they believe everything's wrong and they want to redo it. Hence, AOC, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, her new Green Deal. She wants to revamp everything and have the government control everything and take care of everything and take over everything, right? So they can do it the right way, their way, you know. But Trump said we should send these people back to from where they came from. He told them, you should go back to where you came from. And when you fix the problems where you came from, and he was referring to other countries, but I guess it could equally apply to the districts from which they came. Go back to the countries or go back to the places from from whence you came. And when you're done fixing them, then come back and tell us how well you did, and then we'll take a look at it, right? Essentially, I'm paraphrasing. And they started calling the president a racist. There was no mention of race. There was no mention of specific countries. There was no mention of gender, sexual orientation. There was no mention of religion. Yet he's been labeled a racist. And the Congress this week, they wanted to sanction him. They wanted to censor him. They wanted to condemn his words. There was a big to-do on the House floor over insulting the president with Nancy Pelosi. Nancy Pelosi is trying to accommodate these far-left wackos at the same time. Keep the rest of the Democrat Party pushed back and don't join them. But let's not alienate ourselves from these young radicals, right? Because they need these young voters to vote them into office. So the Democrats, by their action, they're dividing themselves and fighting amongst themselves, and then wanting to fight the president and fight the Republicans and fight the United States of America and fight the Constitution. And in my opinion, they have bitten off far more than they can chew. They have absolutely stepped over the line. They are, to me, incredibly un-American. As far as I'm concerned, they're not just un-American, but they are behaving and speaking and acting in a seditious manner, worthy of being investigated. Worthy of being investigated. Now, anyways, they didn't do any of the things that knucklehead, Al Green, Representative Al Green, Democrat from somewhere, introduced articles of impeachment for the third time, and for the third time he's been rejected. Right? Even the Democrats didn't want to do it because it's ridiculous, and they're seeing the negative fallout that's coming from their idiotic actions. Right? But what the left, the four horsewomen, the horse-faced women, I mean, you look at some of the pictures of AOC, and my God, there's horses that are going, man, you see them teeth? These people, they're communist. They're subversive. They're anti-American, anti-Constitution. Everything that they want is against the very vows or obligation or oath that they took to defend the Constitution. They should be investigated. But speaking of investigations, the FBI this week came out and says, you know what? And this is in light of Mr. Ding-a-ling, the martyr up in Tacoma, Washington, that decided he's going to throw flaming fuel bombs on cars and buildings. Maybe they ought to start investigating these radical groups. Now, if you remember 10 years ago, 15 years ago, the Tea Party was considered radical, right? A bunch of geriatrics, and forgive me if you weren't geriatric, or old or any of the funny labels I'm going to attribute to the Tea Party, but essentially it was older, more tired Republicans. They're the Tea Party because they're not the militia, right? The Tea Party probably supports the militia's willingness to protect the country in times of emergency, right? Because they're the Tea Party, and that was kind of like, let's get back to the original construction, let's think about the Constitution, let's stop taxing people, because the Tea Party in the 1700s was about taxes. And, they wanted to label the Tea Party as radical. The Tea Party would come and do, you could call them a protest, but they're more of a rah-rah rally. And I guess when they would leave, they would pick up their own garbage on the way out. That is not what radicals do, right? Go up to Portland and see what those radicals do. There's trash everywhere. They destroy public and personal property, public and private personal property. They impede traffic. They commit all manner of assault and crime on people, felonies, right? And they leave the place a mess. It's incredible. Anyways, the FBI says, well, maybe we got to start investigating social media groups, right? I wonder if they're going to investigate the Prepared Mind social media group and all the other conservative, libertarian, constitution-loving, gun-toting, right, social media groups on YouTube and Facebook and elsewhere about the internet. Is that what they're going to do, the FBI? Or should they go where it's obvious that they're becoming more and more violent? Because there's going to come a point with all the tension and pressure as the radicals that are available, whether it's 5% or 10% or 20% of the population that are violent, that are radical, dyed in the wool, fully propagandized, fully institutionalized, communists or socialists, if you want to put a pretty spin on it. They can only go so far and get so many people. And after that, they have to use violence to win their revolution. There has never been a peaceful communist revolution in the world. The government doesn't go, you know what, you communists, give it a shot, you crazy guys. We're out of here. We're going to go on vacation. You guys run the show for a while. We'll wait right here. Right? No, communists come in with torches and pitchforks. Right? They take over military institutions and steal their weapons and then use that to violently take over control of a government, take control of the military, or kill them, and then they go out with all that force, physical force called violence, and then they go through the people. And they put people who say, yeah, we'll be communists over here, and then they take people who say no fucking way to communism over here, and then they shoot the people who say no way to communism. That happens with every communist revolution. Chairman Mao, Pol Pot, the Bolsheviks, which was Lenin and Trotsky, followed up by Stalin, who killed his officer corps. He was so paranoid. Come across the ocean. Oh, yeah, we love communists. Where is that guy? Where's Fidel Castro? Where's Che Guevara? The murdering henchman, the hero of Latin American communism. Now everyone goes, Cuba, it's a little island. No, the communists are down in Peru, in Chile, they're in Brazil, they're in Argentina, they're in Ecuador, they're in Paraguay, they're in, Colombia, Panama, Nicaragua, El Salvador, Guatemala, and Mexico. In fact, Mexico has a socialist president, right? The difference between a communist and a socialist is a communist is just a socialist in a big damn hurry. In other words, from Mexico south, it has got communist leaders, communist regimes, and communist revolutionaries coursing through its blood. Its lifeblood is full of these everywhere. And they're just looking and waiting for an opportunity to take over. Some countries are done with it. Some ebb, some flow. Look at Venezuela. They went socialist. They blew everything, destroyed the economy, spent all the money, right? And then started taxing everyone. Super printed money, hyper printed, so they got hyperinflation. They're toast. Gotta love socialism. Those guys are brilliant. Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. This week has been chock full of this. These socialists are dangerous. The FBI should be investigating them. And they should be investigating, right, socialists in government. And guess what was discovered? Some Minnesota organization came out this week, and the story was also covered by Paul Joseph Watson. And if you're a part and an active member in the Prepared Mind Network, over at Patreon or Facebook, you would have seen the video presentations talking about how the congressional member, who is a female, who wears a hijab, right, the traditional Islamic headdress, right? So she's not just obeying her culture and her religion, but she's letting us know exactly who she is, right? She married her brother. First of all, I have no idea if they have a marital relationship, but what I do know is that is the level of lawlessness that she has prescribed or subscribed to in order to get her brother over here. It is called fraud. Now, let me do this, right? When you go to sign a paper, if it's with a local, a county, a state, or the federal government, you usually sign it under penalty of perjury that you're doing to the best of your ability, telling the truth, right? You're filling out the form correctly and accurately. And people make mistakes. Oh, I put the wrong year down or the wrong address. Oh man, the wrong date. How much money I made. I forgot. I got confused. I get it. But you don't get confused about marrying your siblings. There's no confusion there. Unless Ilhan, whatever the hell her name is. I can't even say it right. And too bad. Right? People mispronounce my name all the time. I'll spell it for them and they still mispronounce it. Can you believe that? For people who know my name, right? Johan, Yanni. That's just the first name. The last name they really butcher. Anyways, you don't accidentally marry your brother. You don't fill out the forms and go, oh yeah, this guy, right? That's your brother. You married him. It's a fraudulent act, right? And I believe it's illegal to marry a sibling or to even try to. Anyways, it was done to get him over here. That is the type of character, that these people have. Now go back and I recommend everybody watch all the videos I did this week. None of them are fluff. None of them are bullshit, right? We were busy this week, weren't we? I mean, there's a lot to keep up with. Holy crap, there's no summer vacation for us. Right? There's none. Additionally, YouTube is monetizing some of my videos. So over on YouTube, if you see commercials, those commercials actually make a few pennies. They make a few dollars here and there. Terrific. So if you click on them, that's great, right? If you watch them, that's wonderful. But that helps. So do your part. Let those, understand that that's what those commercials are about. Wonderful things. The kitten concept that I did for a couple of weeks there, it paid off. It actually paid off. It got them to start monetizing the channel better. Wonderful. And I want to thank you guys for doing your job out here, which is supporting us through Patreon, which is supporting my bad habits, right? I had a couple of cigars this week. Thank you very much. Over at PayPal, I've gotten some donations. Thank you, right? Thank you for helping each other understand. There is an incredible network that we've built. It's the Prepared Mind Network, but it includes all these other channels, right? It's the R Syndicate. Go to the rsyndicate.com, right? But the preparedmind.club, where you can shop, right? We've got Facebook, The Prepared Mind, YouTube, The Prepared Mind, and then Patreon, The Prepared Mind. And then we're interconnected through the R Syndicate to everyone else. And I got to tell you, this week, when things happened, I'm starting to get excellent reports. People are beating me to the information, which is great. Because I can't, with the amount of stuff going on, I can't be everywhere at once. But there has just been so much going on. Are we getting closer to shit hitting the fan? Yes, we are. Right? There is a massive, massive, massive heat wave that is east of the Mississippi. We've seen power outages in New York, D.C., now I believe up in either Minnesota or Wisconsin yesterday. Yeah, Friday. It was Friday. right? And if we have massive power outages between the hot temperatures and the extremely high humidity that's being reported, it's going to have a condition or an effect of feeling like 110, 115 degrees. I mean, I'm praying that power does not go out. But if Iran wants to go after the UK, Britain, England, which name to use, right? They may come after us as well and use a cyber attack, EMP weapon, or just direct terror attack on substations. And we have an extremely open electrical grid. You can map it out and find out where things are at. You can drive down the road and go, yep, substation, substation, substation. And it's not hard to take these things out. It's not. It is not hard to take out substations and cause power problems for small and greater areas. Additionally to Iran being blamed or possibly doing this, we have internal false flag operations that can be conducted to blame countries like Iran, to distract us and our attention from the banking crisis, from the leadership crisis with Epstein et al., because that's going to be hundreds of people involved in this pedophile ring, hundreds of people in positions of power and prominence. They need to hide that from people, to hide the banking problems, the finance problems, to hide the debt ceiling problems, to hide the war problems, everything that they've done wrong in D.C., because if they were doing it right, we wouldn't be having this conversation. But they've been doing it all wrong, and they're going to want to blame someone else. And if we have another terror attack against our nation, you can bet your ass that D.C. is going to point across the ocean and blame someone else. And we will be distracted and pissed off, and we'll want revenge on someone else. But I think America's waking up. Americans are waking up. And they're starting to realize, right, that the wool has been pulled over our eyes too many times. And that might be stopping them from pulling these false flags, because people are aware and watching. And it is you, patriotic Americans, God-fearing, red-blooded, Constitution-loving, flag-waving, real Americans. Just little people. And we're keeping an eye on everything. Keeping an eye on everything. And I think I'm going to conclude this video with a quick discussion about precious metals. This week, gold and silver went up tremendously. Now, gold and silver didn't become more valuable in relation to anything else except what it costs to buy some. In other words, the more gold and silver go up, it's more like, well, the dollar went down in value. So as gold and silver goes up, right, it takes more dollars to buy them. In other words, it's like inflation. If gold and silver are going up 5, 7, 10%, that means the currency with relation to gold and silver, right, it has an inverse effect, right? The confidence is being lost in the system, whether it's the money system or the finance system or the political system or the social system. Whatever the confidence level is, that's all our money, the fiat U.S. Federal Reserve note is. It's backed by the full faith, that's belief, and credit. Well, credit, we're kind of up to here in debt. Can barely pay our bills. Full faith and credit. We don't have much credit left to borrow more. Full faith and credit of the people of the United States of America. That's what the money's backed by, and as that faith goes down, the value of the dollar goes down and the value of precious metals go up. And we're seeing it go up. And those of us that have been watching precious metals have noted for many years, and people that are far more educated, experienced, professionals, experts, academics that have been watching far longer than I have. Because until about 4 or 5 years ago, I didn't pay super duper close attention to what's going on in precious metals. Going, why did it go up and then go down? Right? That's what got my attention. But before that, I knew gold and silver were good. I knew they were good to have. Right? But the last 5 years, I've really paid attention and watched. And you can see, even as a novice, that's all I am as a novice. Right? I don't have a bank that's just jam-packed full of assets in gold and silver. I'm not an expert that way, right? But as a novice, I can see the manipulation. And I can see what they're doing, and I understand why they're doing it. They need to keep gold and silver down, so people go, the dollar is strong. But what did we have? Well, Trump wants, not only does he want quantitative easing, not only does he want the rates to come down, the lending rates that the Federal Reserve has, but he also wants the dollar brought down. That's what he said. We need to bring the dollar down to compete. With other nations and what they're doing to debase or bring down the value of their currency for trade advantage, etc., right? But in order to bring the value of the dollar down, one way to do it is to print lots more money. This week, other nations, Russia, China, Japan, etc., they're de-dollarizing. And they're also buying gold and silver, hand over fist. We're going to have an event coming up where they make some announcements, and they're going to say, hey, right, things aren't so good around here. And they're going to have an announcement like they had back in 2008. Hey, financial shit, it's the fan, right? Trouble, trouble, trouble. Stock market crash, etc., yada, yada, yada. That is where being a prepper is where you are good, right? Food, water, shelter, clothing, medicine, means of self-defense, and a plan. Need those things, right? Thank you for supporting, sponsoring, backing, sharing, speaking out, because that's what we need to do, all of us, is speak out and make your voice heard and tell others, I'm not going to shut up. You can't call me a racist for talking about freedom and the Constitution and liberty and rights. That is not racist. Right? I'm not a homophobe for talking about the Constitution and liberty and my rights. And just because I'm white or Christian or male or old or whatever, just because I'm anything other than what I am, you can't say I have to shut up. I have a right to speak. And we all have something wrong with us according to the left. But that doesn't make us wrong, and it shouldn't silence us. We need to take back the conversation. We need to redefine words as to what they actually mean. You got a penis, you're a boy. You're not a tree, you're not a fire hydrant, you're not a girl, you're not an it, you're not a non-binary. You got a penis, you're a boy, you're a man, you're a male. Too bad. You can call yourself whatever you want when you go home and get in your closet. But when you're out on the street and you need a driver's license or work with the government or go get a job or use a public restroom, you have to identify with the thing between your legs. I'm not a sexist or a homophobe or a xenophobe or a transphobe just because I have my belief systems. My belief systems are grounded in reality, tradition, custom, right, and morality. So I can talk, and I will, and I encourage everyone else to do the same thing. Thank you again. I'll talk to you again soon. Chance favors the prepared mind is yours. Semper Fi. Godspeed.